Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asma Ahmed, and I'm a Policy and Advocacy Coordinator with the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Greater Los Angeles Area Chapter. I'd like to welcome everyone here today to our Solidarity Town Hall. I would like to also thank our partners at the Arab American Civic Council and here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County for helping to organize and host this event. We appreciate the support of the elected officials, the interfaith leaders, and the civil rights advocates who have come out today to stand in solidarity with the Muslim community in the wake of the new Muslim ban. So we'll get right to it. Our first speaker is Sheikh Mustafa Umar. Sheikh Mustafa has served the Orange County Muslim community for the last 5 years as Education Director here at the Islamic Institute of Orange County. Sheikh Mustafa.
Assalamu alaikum. I greet you with the greetings of peace. I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone to our institute here, the Islamic Institute of Orange County. This is one of the mosques in Orange County, which probably few of you have visited or at least driven by on the freeway. And we're really happy to host this event. I'll open up this event by quoting a verse from the Quran for you, which relates to justice. So instead of just reciting it, I'll quote it with translation so everyone understands. It's mentioned in the Quran. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, kunu qawwamina bil qisti, shuhada'a lillah. Be upholders of justice, bearing witness for the cause of Allah. Walau ala anfusikum, even if it's against yourselves. Meaning bear witness to justice even if you have to bear witness against yourself. Awil walidaini wal aqrabin. Even if it's against your parents. Even if it's against your relatives. None of that should deter you from enjoining justice and making sure you manifest it. Iyakun ghaniyan aw faqiran. Doesn't matter if the person is rich or the person is poor. Fallahu awla bihima. God is more deserving of that. Meaning that your economic status and your social status does not matter when it comes to the principles of justice. فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَىٰ. Don't follow your base desires. أَن تَعْدِلُوا. Lest you swerve away from justice. وَإِن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تَعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. If you turn away or if you deviate, then know that God is aware of what you're doing. This verse in the Quran really sets the tone for the importance of justice in a society, both on an individual level and on a communal level. And what we're facing today with the Muslim ban 2.0, with the injustices that are being committed against other people, with the type of racial profiling and religious profiling and violation of civil liberties that's taking place, what we do today is really going to set the stage for what defines America in the future. And people are going to look back 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now at this generation and decide who we were and what we did. So I'm extremely happy to have this gathering in this place. And I'll end with a quote by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who lived through the apartheid in South Africa. He said, if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And I'm very glad that everyone's here because it means that they're not going to be following that. Thank you very much for coming. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Sheikh Mustafa. Our next speaker is CAIR LA Executive Director Hussam Alouche, who has served as the head of the Los Angeles chapter of CAIR since 1998. Brother Hussam.
Again, assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. First of all, I have to clarify, it's Sunday, I wasn't planning to wear a tie. But then I asked my colleague, Masih, shall I wear a tie? He said, of course, Congressman Lou Correa would be here wearing a suit. And then he shows up without a tie. Thanks a lot, Lou. I know, exactly. I'm on your side. I didn't want to wear a tie either. But I was forced by my colleague. Thanks a lot, Masih. Well, what I wanted to say is actually challenging times bring the best or the worst in different peoples. And we've seen a lot of challenging and trying times over the last few months. It took me a while to get to see the goodness. You know, I can tell you I was depressed on election day in the evening, and I was praying really hard. And I said, God, please let me see the wisdom of your decision. I knew there was a wisdom, but I failed to see it. And I realized that we would be on a tough ride, very rough ride, with just judging by the rhetoric that we heard during the campaign. The rhetoric against Mexicans, against women, against Muslims, against immigrants, refugees, you know, talking about banning Muslims or preventing, having a full shutdown or complete shutdown of Muslims coming to the US, or forcing Muslims to register, or Islam hates us, all the nonsense we heard. So for me, I knew it's going to be a tough ride for us. But it didn't take long until I started seeing the goodness that was meant out of this thing. The goodness is, imagine on Inauguration Day, the Women's March, where millions and millions of women of all backgrounds got together and sent a message to the rest of the country that we count. Really, what counts in America is the people. We, the people, sent a message that we will not allow anyone to target any community. Even though the main focus of the march was to make sure that we protect the rights of women that were worked hard and earned hard, they also made sure that they sent a message. This is about standing by Muslims, by immigrants, by refugees, by all people of color, all minorities in our country. And then we all got shocked with the announcement of the Muslim ban, or the travel ban, as he likes to fake it with a different name, President Trump. Immediately, spontaneously, tens of thousands of people, fellow Americans, wanted to respond to it. And what did they do? They marched into the airports. They didn't know what to do. People can tell you it was organized. It wasn't organized. People helped, maybe supported, but it was really spontaneous. People like yourself and myself, who decided to say something that this is not acceptable. And I went to LAX, and 99% of the people there were not people of the Muslim faith. And what was their slogan? What was their shout? What was their shout? Anyone remembers? No hate, no fear. Muslims are welcome here. And I asked people, what are you doing here? They said, we're here. We were here to demand that Muslims who are being unfairly detained and abused at the airports be released. And that's when I knew that's the goodness that God had intended for us. This is the moment for us to work together and unite. And it has truly brought the best in many, many Americans, a majority of Americans. Think about it. When a mosque was burned down to the ground basically, in Texas, people in America, around the country, raised money to rebuild the mosque. Most of the donors were not Muslims, from all over the country. The rabbi from the synagogue next door to the mosque came to the leadership of the mosque and gave them a key. You know what key was that? The key to their temple, to their synagogue. He said, use it whenever. He didn't say, call us when you need it. He said, here's the key. You come and pray at our synagogue until you have your mosque ready. And it didn't take long. Think about it. When Jewish cemeteries were being targeted, vandalized, the Muslim community immediately jumped in to do what is our collective duty to do, to each other. And they said they raised money to help fix and repair those cemeteries. These are the messages that we're witnessing nationwide, locally, regionally, nationally. And we're more fortunate than the rest of the country to be in California, a state where actually most people are progressive, inclusive, seeking justice and equality and harmony among ourselves. So I think we do have really a moment of truth, an opportunity for all of us to stand up together. Send the message to the rest of the country. Let's make California a beacon of justice, of equality, of harmony. Let's make California the basis and the foundation for the resistance against all attempts by any elected official, any agency, including our president and those with him, who try to divide us along religious, ethnic, social, economic classes. And in conclusion, I think it's a great message that we come here and meet at a mosque, one of the largest mosques in Orange County. And I know I speak on behalf of all Muslims in Orange County in Southern California when I say thank you. Truly from the bottom of our heart. The love you've shown to us, the support, the solidarity, we can't find words to thank you for it. I know I speak on behalf of the whole community. It has really uplifted a morale that was really down only a few weeks ago. But I can also tell you, as a commitment from myself and the Muslim community, we also stand by all of you. This is not about President Trump versus Muslims. This is truly about our Constitution, about what Sheikh Mustafa said, what kind of America we leave to our children. This is the America I always loved. The stories that I shared, this is exactly what I knew about America. So this is a commitment to all of us, that as we stood in solidarity against the clear abuses, the Muslim ban and things like that, there are some less clear positions that we need to make it very clear today that we stand also in solidarity with. When we talk about racism against African Americans in our country, against the immigrant community at large, against Latino community members, against the undocumented. You know, the undocumented sometimes are forgotten because people, oh, they broke the law. No one in the sight of God is illegal. Everyone deserves dignity. All communities. All religious communities. So let's use this gathering today to renew our commitment to stand with all communities. Any community that gets targeted unfairly, we will be there before them, not just with them, not behind them. We'll stand ahead of them in defending them, because an injustice against any community is an injustice against all of us. And if we allow one community to be mistreated, we will be next. Thank you for being here. God bless you.
Thank you, Brother Hassam. Our next speaker is Mervet Jude. She is Vice Chair of the Arab American Civic Council, which is one of the co-organizers of this event. The Arab American Civic Council is a community-based organization that strives to empower Arab Americans in Southern California. Mervet?
Hassan was talking, so I don't have to worry about it. There he goes. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Good afternoon y buenos días por mi gente latina que está aquí hoy. I would like to take the time first to thank my home mosque, which is Islamic Institute of Orange County, for hosting us today, and extend our sincerest gratitude to Congressman Lou Correa, Senator Josh Newman, and Senator Tony Mendoza for initiating the collaboration of the Solidarity Town Hall, together for our communities. Thank you. The Arab American Civic Council, as beautiful Asma mentioned, was honored to help organize this town hall with CAIR, proud leader in civic engagement here in Southern California. What is the purpose of this town hall? Well, these town halls all over the county and all over that Lou Correa has done many of them, and many of the senators and congressmen have attempted to do this for our community. The purpose is, well, due to executive orders that have threatened our freedom, our Constitution, right to exist and live freely, needless to say, our realities have been shaken. And many are scared, anxious, hopeless, and are experiencing a roller coaster of emotions. During these times, we need to know that we are not alone. We're not alone. And you know, the marches, the Women's March, and what happened at the airport, that proved to us we are not alone, alhamdulillah, thank God. During these times, we need to know that we are not alone, that people will stand with us and for us. We need to know our rights. We need to know where to go for assistance, and that is why we are here today. We are here to learn, to unite, to empower ourselves through our unity and solidarity as targeted communities, and get connected to organizations, elected officials, such as these gentlemen, and individuals that are here to support us and want to protect our rights. It is true. We are stronger. Knowledge is power. This crucial combination makes the unattainable attainable and the impossible possible. Knowledge helps counteract ignorance and fear. Unity makes the minority the majority. We are no longer the minority. We, the people, are the majority. Today, We will be enlightened and inspired by the words of our interfaith leaders, strengthened and united by our Muslim Latino Collaborative, which is a collaborative that seeks to unite the Muslim and Latino communities to be stronger together as one. So we stand together in moments of injustice, regardless of which community it affects, because if it affects one community, it affects all of our communities. Thank you. We'll be informed on what some of our elected officials are doing to help protect our American values. And we will feel more empowered and learning about our rights by our leading civil rights organizations and finding out what they are doing to help protect those rights. Today and every day, we have the opportunity for change and a better tomorrow. All we have to have is faith. In the great words of Martin Luther King, Jr., may he rest in peace, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. I don't see the whole staircase, but I know that freedom and justice and peace for all is attainable. It is. Why? Because together, the impossible is possible. I ask you, my fellow Americans and human beings, please take this step with us, and let us vow to stand and protect our American values. Can you say this with me? Okay, so we're gonna everybody knows me, I'm a little hyper, so. So here we go, we're gonna do this? Okay. No ban! No wall! We will not let American values fall! Thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Brother Hussam and Mervat. I would now like to invite our elected officials up here if they could take a seat at the table. Our first speaker will be Congressman Lou Correa. Congressman Correa grew up here in Anaheim and has been a public servant for almost 20 years, serving in both the state Senate and the Assembly. He represents the 46th Congressional District of California, which includes the city of Anaheim. Congressman Correa.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. This is a great city of Anaheim, the city I grew up in. Before I get started, though, can I see what other electeds are here today? Can you please stand up so we can recognize you? No others, huh? I see Mr. Jose Moreno, Mr. Tom Daly, his representative. Shout out. Who else? Thank you very much for joining us in this most important event on this Sunday. And it's been pointed out, I'm not wearing a tie today. I actually came directly from church today. I try to keep Sunday as Day of the Family, keep the Lord's Day holy, but this is important work, so I'm here today. A lot of things going on in Washington, but I believe the things that are most important are what's going on here locally. 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from Bishop Van, the bishop of the Catholic Church, and I'm very, very proudly Catholic. And the bishop was very disturbed, very angry, and he conveyed to me a story. He said, Lou, I have immigration vans, I have vice vans driving through the Catholic Church grounds here in Garden Grove. And he said, Lou, and we have pictures to prove it. What do we do? So after a few minutes, we came together and decided he was going to write a letter to Secretary Kelly, Homeland Security, and try to follow up with some discussion, try to get our federal government to respect our religious sanctuary, the Catholic Church. We have a very interesting paradigm going on right now in this country. I lived here all my life. This is a great city, a great country. And I look at this as a time for us to wake up. Every day I pray. This morning I prayed not for a miracle, but for strength and courage to do what needs to be done. We kind of saw this coming in October. We kind of saw hints that this was going to happen. And in some of our communities, we had such low voter turnout. I remember walking door to door, election day, and people saying, it doesn't matter if I vote. Other folks saying, he's not really going to do what he's saying he's going to do. And I, for the life of me, could not understand why people did not take the time to simply vote. In Sacramento, there's a faux pas, in Washington, we're having press conferences. Congressional Hispanic Caucus tried to have a meeting with ICE. We had a meeting scheduled, we showed up, and we got kicked out. All of a sudden, it wasn't for us, it was for leadership in Congress, and we weren't welcome. Well, same thing, over and over again. We show up, people don't show up for the meetings. And I guess that's, again, part of the new paradigm. But if we think about what our goal is here locally, it's got to be make sure that every time something happens that is not consistent with our values, like that phone call that I got from Bishop Van, we stand up and we call people on it. We can't afford to let this become one of those business as usual. We cannot think of this as a new reality, the new paradigm, where we get used to things being the way they might turn out to be. I love to see our communities organized. I love to see democracy in action. People walking, carrying signs at LAX when they announced that ban. I was there. A lot of good energy. A lot of folks. But let that be the beginning and not the end. Before you pick up that sign and walk and march, I want you to go out and register people to vote. Before you go out and do that, I want you to go out and touch your neighbor who's not an American citizen and ask that person to become an American citizen. Because this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Let's talk about democracy and the importance of the vote. Folks, our communities, we're working class families. And it's very hard for us. Some of us have 2 or 3 or 4 jobs trying to make ends meet. And now I'm going to ask our friends and neighbors to push a little bit more, stretch a little bit more, and become politically active. Be active enough so that people take notice in terms of our democracy. That's where we need to go. When we have these events again, I want to hear people that report to me that they've gone out and registered new people to vote. We're blessed that we live in a democracy. We're blessed that the courts have stepped forward and said, we don't have a king, but a president who's checked off by the judiciary. Okay? But we can't stop. We got to keep going. And it's up to us individually to take part in this. Please, let today be the start and not the end. 18 months, we have a new election. 18 months, another election. Let's make sure we stand up and be counted. And finally, let me say that if there's another executive order that calls for a Muslim registry, I want to be on that registry. All of us stand together. All of us stand united. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Our next speaker is State Senator Tony Mendoza. State Senator Tony Mendoza represents the nearly 1 million residents of the 32nd Senate District, which encompasses parts of LA and Orange counties. He previously served in the State Assembly from 2006 to 2012. And now, Senator Mendoza.
Hello, everybody. I want to first thank Senator Newman and also Congressman Correa for helping us put this together. I want to thank the Islamic Institute also for allowing us to be here, and the interfaith community for helping organize and be present. I am honored to be here and stand with you. Now more than ever, we must stand together against an administration that would only seek to divide us. We live in a time where the federal government is led by people who are actively seeking to undermine the very foundations of our American principles. We are a nation that welcomes others with open arms because we, the people, are stronger as a unified, colorful, diverse whole. When I look at the people gathered here today, it brings me hope to see so many people who share and desire to protect our vibrant community. It is incredibly important that we stand together through the dark times because we need unity in the face of injustice. I don't want to return to the time where people were afraid to open up the door when they hear that knock from law enforcement. This isn't today you, tomorrow me. We are experiencing as a nation, and we call for together now, together forever. The executive orders coming from Washington under this president have served to make our nation weaker without any positive benefit. The new immigration order still contains provisions that would ultimately slow travel and immigration to the United States from every corner of the globe. This administration views immigrants as a threat to the U.S. economy and national security, not as contributors to our country, to our community that they factually are. The order will have profound implications for our economy. In addition to the universities that rely on dollars from international students, hotels that count on foreign tourists, and technology companies that seek talent abroad. The fact is that California is stronger culturally and economically when we encourage immigration. California is home to more than 10 million immigrants. About 1 in 4 of those immigrants are foreign born. In 2015, the most current year with data, 27% of California's population was foreign born, twice the national average. We welcome immigrants from around the world, from all walks of life, and our state is stronger because of their presence. When immigrants come to California, the United States, they are seeking a better life for themselves and their family. They bring with them determination to overcome great odds and build a better world for their loved ones. Immigrants bring an entrepreneurial spirit and often start new businesses, which in turn creates jobs for everyone. Immigrants founded 18% of 2010 Fortune 500 companies, creating 3.6 million jobs for people. When including immigrants and their children, the number of Fortune 500 companies with immigrant roots jumps to 40%, employing more than 10 million people. Just to name a few here, Google, Procter & Gamble, Kraft, Colgate, Palmolive, Pfizer, and eBay are just a few. Immigrants boost tax revenue, enlarge the taxpayer base, and help keep down the price of goods. On average, immigrants, including the undocumented, pay nearly $1,800 more in taxes than they receive in benefits. Without immigrants, the United States will not have enough new workers to support its retirees. Workers, 70 years ago, there were about 150 workers for every 20 seniors. 10 years ago, there were about 100 workers for every 20 seniors. It is projected that by the year 2050, there will only be 56 workers for every 20 seniors. The U.S. needs new taxpayers to help fund Social Security and Medicare, and new workers to fill retirees' positions and provide their health care benefits. To try and halt is to halt the economic progress of our country. Even more important than that, however, is that restricting immigration means turning back on America's foundation as an immigrant nation. America as a whole deserves better than this misguided, ill-advised leadership. We are the nation that has a monument calling for those yearning for a better life to come and join us. Our foundation is one of welcoming people to our country, regardless of where they come from, what they believe, or what nation their family originated in. We are a nation of bridge builders, and we take pride in tearing down arbitrary walls. In closing, I am glad to be a part of today's gathering. I stand with you. I stand with our shared principles. I know that we can do anything if we do it together. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and thank you all for being here. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator Mendoza. Our final elected representative here today is State Senator Josh Newman. Senator Newman was elected to the State Senate on November 8th, 2016. He represents the 29th Senate District, which includes portions of LA, Orange, and San Bernardino counties. He is also a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. Senator Newman?
So I too am a little resentful of Congressman Correa for the tie thing. I want to get that out there. First of all, thank you to CAIR for so graciously hosting today's event. Thank you, Asma, Sheikh Umar, and Hassam for your leadership here. Thank you to Senator Mendoza, who modestly did not mention, this is actually Senator Mendoza's idea. He and I were speaking, I think it was the day of the travel ban, and there was some discussion within the chamber in Sacramento, the State Senate. He and I happened to be standing next to each other, and Senator Mendoza said, we should do something. We should do something local. We should get people together and make sure that everybody knows we are together. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of justifiable anguish. And so this is Senator Mendoza's idea. It would not have happened had I not had the good sense to call Mervet Judah, and who is, and I may be newly elected, and I actually, technically, I guess election night was November 8th. I was not elected till November 24th. That's how new I am. That's how long it took. I won by such a landslide, they just wanted to keep counting and counting. But Mervet, thank you for putting this together. This is really impressive to see all of you, and especially the breadth of our community that is present today, and so it is gratifying. Sheikh Umar mentioned this as he began his remarks, the importance of bearing witness for justice. There are some other folks here that I regard as role models myself that I'd like to call out, who have been witnesses for justice. Dr. Moreno has already been recognized, but deserves additional recognition. Felicity Figueroa is here, a champion of justice and a tireless worker on behalf of so many good causes. Kitty Jaramillo is here, who took on the city of Fullerton. And like Dr. Moreno, we now have district elections and more justice in Fullerton. And if you don't know Marty Schrank, you have been somewhere else. But Marty is here. Marty has been a stalwart for democratic causes, for charitable causes, for many years. I'll underestimate it. 45 years, and deserving of recognition. So, and I will commend my colleagues here, for both of your remarks, which touch on different facets. But we are clearly living. It's an understatement to say we're living in an interesting time. We're living in a disconcerting time. The travel ban. The overzealous enforcement. It starts to call into question many of our basic assumptions about America, that we believe fundamentally in rule of law, in freedom of expression, in freedom of religion, in freedom of assembly, in the fundamental rights of the individual. And I have to confess, I never thought I would live in a time like this. We all thought George W. Bush was bad. I think we're all appreciating President Barack Obama right now, and we all completely underestimated what we've gotten ourselves into. Now, I want to take just a little bit of issue with something that Congressman Correa said. California's on the right side of this. Hillary Clinton won by 2 million votes here, and so it is true. Everybody has to participate. But again, we're living in a really strange moment where California stands in some ways alone. And that is something we never thought we would see, but that is where we are, and that is kind of where we start. I'm proud to represent the 29th Senate District. I'm proud to represent Anaheim as part of my district, but Wade, you're not in my district right now. I actually, within my district are all the parts of 16 cities, 58% by population in Anaheim, and it all west of Harbor. So if anybody wants to move west of Harbor, I would welcome you into my district. But what's more important is the state Senate and the state legislature generally, and this governor, we stand with you. I'm actually very proud. Senator De Leon introduced last week a resolution, SR 22, which called out, I think appropriately, the overzealous enforcement and the failure to live up to the sensitive locations provision, which has been in place for some time. And again, there are certain places that should be fundamentally safe and should be effectively sacred: schools, places of worship, hospitals. We're seeing ICE and other kinds of enforcement in all of these locations and more, and it is really scary for all of us. There are, unfortunately, limits on what state government can do. And what you see right now is this sort of interesting situation where the federal government is not one that we thought we'd see, which is having an impact on local communities in a way that we've never seen. It's certainly not in my adult lifetime. And so we, in the state Senate and the legislature, will do whatever we can. And so, I'm proud of our leadership for standing up very aggressively, very articulately, and framing this issue and reiterating our principles as a state. Let me also introduce two members of my staff, Sebastian Calderon, Caterina Ioannidis. And all kidding aside, we're here for you. It doesn't matter where you live. If there are issues, please bring them to us. I can say the same for Senator Mendoza. I know that's true for Congressman Correa. We'll do whatever we can. I'm proud to be serving. Asma mentioned I'm a veteran. I'm proud to have served. I regard this as an extension of that service. I'm glad to be here today. Mostly I'm here to learn. And so I welcome the coming panels. But again, anything we can do for you. And as Congressman Correa said, we're not alone. We're stronger together. Mervette got it right. If I had the nerve to do a chant, I would do it. But I can't do it better than you. So thank you for being here. And I look forward to learning more.
Thank you, Senator Newman, and thank you to all of our elected representatives, Congressman Correa, State Senator Mendoza, State Senator Newman. I just wanted to mention that CAIR has some constitutions outside on a table, and please, everyone, as you leave, when you do leave at the end of the program, please pick one up on your way out. Our number is on the back in case you need us for any reason, especially if some kind of incident occurs and you need to call us. I'd like to invite our next panelists up here. So that would be Reverend Sarah Halverson, Rabbi Heidi Cohen, and Dr. Jose Moreno. Our first speaker will be Reverend Sarah Halverson. She is a senior pastor at Fairview Community Church in Costa Mesa. Well, actually, I don't know if do you want to come one at a time? Okay. So yes, Reverend Sarah Halverson is a senior pastor at Fairview Community Church in Costa Mesa. She's very involved in the Southern California community, serving on the boards of the ACLU of Southern California and Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, CLU-OC. Reverend?
Thank you so much. It is so good to be in the house of God together with you, and I'm so grateful to be asked to be here this afternoon. It's always a joy to come together with my Muslim brothers and sisters and in an interfaith community. I think perhaps as I identify myself as a Christian pastor, I also feel equally as someone who would identify as a person of faith and as a religious person. I feel sometimes that I have so much more in common with people like my brother Hussam in the Islamic tradition than I might with another Christian. And so what I want to talk about today is what it really means to have solidarity and unity. And I want to do that, though, from a Christian perspective, because as a pastor, I have to say that I feel that my own faith has been misrepresented, if you will, by many people who claim to be Christians. Now, I want to also honor that this past week, Joe Kennedy III really took the time to explain what mercy is. And of course, he was doing this in the context of healthcare. Now, as a Christian, I happen to follow the universal healthcare giver, Jesus of Nazareth. So we're not really going to be talking about healthcare today, but as we've said, there are just a myriad of ills that are happening in our society today. But when we think about Jesus and what Jesus did as a healer of all people, as a feeder of those who are hungry, as a welcomer to any who are different than him, it's very clear to me that to use the Christian faith to argue the opposite of that in any context is wrong. It's a misrepresentation of Jesus, it's immoral, and it's a darn lie. We have to call out those lies when we see them. Because if anybody knows Jesus, and if you don't, I'm not going to try to make you become a Jesus person like me, but he's a great guy. And I'd invite you to read particularly one of my favorites, the Gospel of Luke. Now, I'm a prophet girl too, but I'm going to leave that to my Hebrew Bible sister over here with the Jewish tradition. But Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. Do you know what Jesus did in perhaps one of the most famous parables? It's called the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, we completely miss the purpose of this parable in our society because so often we think a good Samaritan is just somebody who helps out every once in a while, who, they're the good Sam with the RV sticker. And that's great. That's good. But do you know who a Samaritan was? A Samaritan was a dirty foreigner who didn't belong. And what Jesus did was make the Samaritan the hero of the story. When the religious elite passed by and did nothing, feared for their own lives, it was the Samaritan whose life was really at risk, who stopped, who gave of himself, and became the hero of the story. All of us are not just to be good Samaritans who stop and help, but we are supposed to be like that foreigner who was considered illegitimate. We are supposed to be like that very man who risked his own life for someone else. How could we then, especially those of us who claim ourselves to be Christian, turn away that very Samaritan in our own communities? It is because of Jesus that I'm here today. I think that's why you invited me, because I'm a Christian pastor. But most importantly, because those of us who claim this faith, and there are so many of them out there who are using those words, and they're using it to be isolationists, they're using it to be terrorists among us, to invoke terror in one another. Those people, I don't want to say that they're not Christian, but they certainly are not following the same man I am. Jesus of Nazareth was a uniter. He brought people together. He believed in the very topic we are talking about today, in true solidarity. And that's why I'm here. That's why we're here together as people of many faiths, or perhaps people of no faith at all, because we believe that we are truly better together. And so many people have said it, so it will sound cliche now, but we know that when I'm hurting, that you also feel pain. Thank God for that. And that when you hurt, I also feel pain. And this to me is what my teacher, Jesus, taught us. But I know that we can hear that in every tradition. And I think we're going to hear a little bit about it right now from my sister, the Rabbi Heidi Cohen.
Thank you, Reverend. Our next speaker in our Stronger Together panel is Rabbi Heidi Cohen. She has been a rabbi at Temple Beth Shalom in Santa Ana since 1998. Temple Beth Shalom has been serving the Jewish community of Orange County for almost 75 years. Rabbi?
Shalom Aleichem. I love the fact that it just, it works together. It's so beautiful. I want to thank Mervet and CAIR, but Mervet especially, for calling, texting, messaging, and saying, hey, Come on, sister, we got to do this. And I love it. So thank you so very, very much. And to all of you. So today, first of all, giving 2 minutes to clergy to talk. What were you thinking? Anyway. Okay, you got it. So today is Purim. Purim is this amazing holiday that is a heck of a good time. We have a wonderful experience in celebrating and remembering and studying from and learning from and growing from the book of Esther. So what is this all about? Well, you see, there was in this land of Persia, in Shushan, there was a king who then, King Ahasuerus, who let one queen go. We'll get into details later. Come find me. And he went searching for another queen, found the beautiful Queen Esther. Her uncle Mordecai was the man who inspired her to go and to be with the king. He's like, I know that there's something that you need to do, something greater in your life. So Esther became the new queen, and there was an evil man. His name was Haman. And here we go. Okay, they know what to do when you hear that name. So when he wanted to go ahead and destroy the Jewish people, Mordecai, Esther's uncle, went to her and said, Esther, you have the king's ear. You have the power, your one voice, to go and to speak to the king and to let him know who you are. Because Esther, you are not just the queen, you are a Jew. You are one of us who this evil man wants to destroy. Esther, you need to go speak to the king. But Esther said, I can't do this by myself. And so she said to everybody, you need to fast with me on this day. So that way we can pray together, we can send all this energy together, that if I go before the king, that hopefully he will listen to me. And that hopefully our people will be saved. We have to do this together. And so she was. This one woman was able to save her people, but she didn't do it alone. All the people did it together. All of the people joined together. One voice, sure, but one voice can truly make a difference. My friends, we all have one voice. No matter what that voice sounds like, no matter how it comes out, either vocally or in writing or with our spirit or whatever it is that we do, each of us have a voice. When somebody wants to destroy us, when somebody wants to take advantage of us, when somebody wants to tear us apart, we stand up. We use our voices and we say, oh no, no. You are not going to do that. I will not let you. My voice, I will speak out. And then our voices, they rise up together into one chorus. That's what we need to do. The rabbi, the Jewish community in Victoria Island of Texas, yes, they handed the key. Their voices rose up to be able to join together with their Muslim brothers and sisters and said, yes, come and pray in our space, because every space, wherever we are, is holy space. Our voices can rise up and we can fulfill exactly what it says in Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. It doesn't say justice just once. It says it twice. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Each and every one of us, we are to pursue justice. So raise up your voices. Don't be shy. Do it together. No, you're not alone. None of us are alone. I am so grateful. I am so grateful to call each and every one of you my brothers, my sisters, because we are all, every single person created, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Don't forget that. Never let anybody forget that. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. May we truly always pursue justice today and forever. Let that be our blessing. Let us say amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Our final speaker on this panel is Dr. Jose Moreno. Dr. Moreno is an Anaheim City Council member representing District 3. He is also president of Los Amigos of Orange County, a community group serving people in communities in need. Los Amigos is a member organization of the recently formed Muslim Latino Collaborative. Dr. Moreno?
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to say or do at this point. Thank you, good night. Go and hug everybody, please. Thank you for the invitation, and Merved also was texting me and Facebook living me and saying, you better be there. Thank you, Asma, for keeping up with me in terms of my own schedule, and of course, Hassam and Sheikh Mohammed and others who have opened up the home here to all of us. Yet again, IIOC was one of the first spaces, be it a faith-based space or just a community space or any space that opened up its home for us to have conversations about district-based elections in Anaheim, including hosting candidate forums when nobody else would do it because they didn't want to get people upset in Anaheim. So thank you, IIOC, because you have stood with us with persistence. While I certainly am sitting on the City Council of Anaheim, I was asked to speak more from the perspective of Los Amigos of Orange County and the Latino Muslim Collaborative. And it's a struggle to think about how we in community come together around a collaborative to bring solidarity to one another when we ourselves are struggling within our own sense of community within ourselves. Los Amigos of Orange County, for folks who may not be familiar, we've been meeting for over 38 years. Our founding president, Amin David, who recently passed this past year, was our founding president. And he made a commitment to the mayor of Anaheim at the time, Bill Thom, who actually asked leaders of the Mexican-American community to come together after an incident of police brutality towards Mexican-American youth. And they met for over a year every week for breakfast just to create a relationship. And what Amin said that they learned in that process is that only good can come from dialogue. Only good can come from engagement. Whether we agree or disagree or sometimes feel that we come from very vast differences in community, dialogue can always bring us together in a spirit of nos gusta ayudar. That is, we like to help. So when Mayor Thom was finishing his term, he was given a meal, a dinner of thank you, where over 300 plus community members came to give him thanks. He was one of the first local electeds in Anaheim to actually reach out to the Mexican-American community. And he said, if you truly want to thank me, just keep meeting. That was 38 years ago. Every single Wednesday at a German restaurant called the Jaeger House, radical Latino group meets to eat French toast and to discuss matters of our community. But over those 38 years, we've had a group of folks from different racial backgrounds, different faiths, different economic status, electeds, non-electeds. There are no VIPs at Los Amigos on Wednesdays except those who need help. So we start the meeting with a prayer. We start the meeting with welcoming folks who are there for the first time, what we call a yo-yo. And then we say, how can we help? And everybody uses their social capital, their cultural capital, their knowledge, their networks to meet the need of whoever shows up that morning. And we stay there till 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock until the last petition is heard. So when this recent iteration of attacks against our communities came forth, of course, Los Amigos, along with Accord and other institutions, CAIR and other organizations, we came together and said, how do we help one another? How do we support each other through these very difficult times? And so out of that, we constructed this thing we call the Latino Muslim Collaborative. We don't know yet what it is yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. But as we have communities of faith, we have faith in community. And so for us, to Los Amigos and the Latino Muslim Collaborative, we recognize that many of our faith-based brothers and sisters are racialized through their faith. And some of us as Latinos are illegalized through this idea called law and order. And for us as Latinos, this is just the recent iteration, and that's why for us it's so important to just keep standing through the resilience that we've built over the history of this country here in the Southwest. In the 1930s, over 1 million people were deported, including U.S. citizen children. Lou Correa documented in a resolution when he was on the Senate in the most recent iteration that there are now over 500,000 U.S. citizen children living in Mexico as a function of the deportation machine under a Democratic president. 1 million. Over 1 million. Thank you, Lou, for the correction. Under a Democratic president. We also lived through the 1950s called Operation Wetback, which is where the term comes from, a federal designation that said we will now deport the braceros who we asked and begged to come to serve our economy during World War II. And we saw there hundreds of thousands deported yet again. So we're going through another iteration of this work. But now we have more people, we have more voices, and now we have a documented set of curriculum and history, both through our faith-based institutions and our universities and ethnic studies who have said, we've gone through this before, we know what we need to do. And that's stand together. So in the Latino Muslim Collaborative, one of the things that I hope we will focus on, I know we're going to focus on because we discussed it, is looking at this experience through the lens of our youth. Through the lens of our youth. If there's one thing that unites us as either immigrants, as refugees, as those who have been descendants of the Mayflower, is that we came here so that our children can have a better life than ours. And that our children can live out what's called, to create that more perfect union called the United States, the multicultural project called America. So in the Latino Muslim Collaborative, we will commit to that. We will work hard through each other, but we will do work within ourselves. Latinos must understand our own sense of unity and often disunity. And our Muslim brothers and sisters are going to have to figure out their sense of unity and disunity. And through that process together, we'll come together as the human beings that we know we can be together in faith and community. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and we look forward to seeing you out on the streets.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all of our panelists, Reverend Sarah Halverson, Rabbi Heidi Cohen, and Dr. Jose Moreno. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite the speakers from our last panel for the afternoon. It's our Know Your Rights panel. Please, can I have Masih Foladi, Laboni Haq, and Jose Serrano? Masih Foladi is the advocacy manager at CAIR LA. Laboni Haq is the litigation director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Los Angeles. Advancing Justice is the nation's largest legal and civil rights organization for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And Jose Serrano is the refugee program manager at World Relief of Garden Grove. World Relief is a nonprofit organization that works to empower the local church to serve the most vulnerable.
Assalamu alaikum everyone and greetings. My name is again Masih Foladi. I'm the advocacy manager at CAIR LA. I'm very happy to be here joined by our partners, Asian Americans Advancing Justice and World Relief. The goal of this panel is really to make sure that the community is empowered with information to protect your rights and to also share the resources that our organizations have to again assist you if you encounter an incident, if you experience some kind of discrimination, if you have an encounter with law enforcement or immigration services. Additionally, I want to try to wrap our panel up as quickly as possible because a lot of the local officials have stuck around for Q&A. And I know a lot of times when it comes to Know Your Rights panels, hearing from the community, hearing your concerns and your questions will better guide us. So very quickly, a quick summary of what we're going to be covering. Labani is going to be talking about the Muslim ban, the original ban and Muslim ban 2.0, how they differed and what you need to know. And additionally talking about encounters at the airport. And then Jose will talk a little bit about Know Your Rights in general, if you're encountered by a law enforcement official on the street, how to engage with them, how to interact with them, and the impact that this ban is having on the refugee community. And lastly, I'll cover a little bit about if you're attending a protest, exactly what are your rights, what you should know, and encouraging people to be civically engaged. So at this time, I'm going to pass the mic to Labani.
Assalamu alaikum. It's really nice to be here with everybody today, and thank you for CAIR for organizing both this and many, many other Know Your Rights presentations. It's really, really important that people understand what's going on. I know it's a very confusing time, and we've had one Muslim ban. It was ended by a Ninth Circuit case, and now we have another one. So I'm here to, try to explain to you the differences and what still stands. I think, as an overall theme, it's certainly still a Muslim ban. It's still a refugee ban. We still have 6 as opposed to 7 countries that are subject to the ban. The countries are Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And we still have a 120-day ban on refugees from all countries. And so, there are some facial differences, as I'll talk about, but it's really, really important to know and to recognize that it is a Muslim ban, it's a refugee ban. I think a lot of times I hear it referred to as a travel ban, and that always kind of gets on my nerves because it makes it sound like less severe than what it really is. So with that, I wanted to talk first about just the differences. I think a lot of you probably know about the ban because it's affected either you or people in your family or your friends. But I think the main difference is that it no longer applies to legal permanent residents. That was a very confusing aspect of the first ban. It does not apply to people from one of the 6 banned countries who are dual citizens and they're traveling on a different passport, so it won't apply to those people. It will not apply to anybody who has a valid visa on the day the ban goes into effect, and that's an important date. It's March 16th, which is coming up. So the new ban was issued last Monday, but it didn't go into effect immediately. There's about a 10-day lag period. And a lot of the changes between the old ban and the new ban was really to kind of address some of the concerns that were raised by the courts with respect to the way that the first ban was rolled out and the provisions of the first ban. So this 10-day period really goes to one of those major concerns, which was people were not given due process rights in terms of being subject to the ban. What we saw is basically immediately upon the ban being issued on a Friday night, January 27th, was that people were being stopped after they arrived in the US and turned back right away. They were asked to sign documents that gave up their rights for them to enter the US, and very, very long, prolonged periods of time where people were subject to very intense questioning and scrutiny. So with this new ban, it shouldn't happen in that same way. But obviously, it remains to be seen how they roll it out. So I think everybody is still continuing to be vigilant. So, and what you saw under the old ban was this mass chaos. Advancing Justice, CAIR, and many other organizations were on the ground in that kind of organic response that Brother Hassam talked about in terms of being able to help people on the ground. And we'll still have that available to people. We're all, I think, planning to be at the airport on March 16th, just to make sure that the ban is, that people aren't being, negatively treated or being provided their due process rights at the airport. The other part of the ban is that under the first ban, a lot of people had their visas revoked. And so this new ban specifically says that anybody who had their visas revoked are entitled to have them reinstated so that they can come back because they had valid visas at the time that they were trying to come into the country. So that's another thing, that if you know people in that situation, you should please tell them to, quickly get their visas reinstated so that they can come if they'd like to. I mentioned, the due process kind of changes between the old and the new ban. And in addition to the delay in the ban going into effect, there's also a waiver provision which allows you to apply for a waiver from the ban so that you wouldn't be subject to the ban. In order to do that, you can apply in your home country or through a consular officer, or you can apply. You may be able to do so, when you arrive with the CBP here. It's fairly unclear how it's all going to work out because right now it's just on paper. But if you can establish that there's some kind of undue hardship, if you can establish that your arrival here would not be a national security issue, and if you can establish that it's in the nation's interest for you to be waived from the ban, there is a waiver provision. Again, we don't know exactly how that's going to work, but just know that that's something that you may be able to take advantage of if you're from one of those 6 countries. The one country that is no longer on the ban, that was on the ban initially, is Iraq, which on the face of it sounds like a good thing, but the reality is that a lot of the people who were coming over from Iraq were refugees. And in the refugee provision of the ban, which I'll talk about next, and I think we'll hear about further, Iraqis are still subject to the ban. And on top of that, the ban also specifically states that Iraqis will be subject to very intense scrutiny for coming over. So we still see a fairly detrimental effect on people coming from Iraq. But the basic takeaway, I guess, is if you are from one of the 7 countries and you have dual citizenship, you should definitely use another country that you have citizenship with to travel. You shouldn't travel from if on the visa or the passport from one of the 6 countries. And you should consider potentially applying for one of these waivers. I think we'd be very interested in the civil rights community to see how that actually plays out and whether it's actually being implemented in the way that they say that, or it will be available to people in the way that they say that it will. And just get your visa in place quickly before March 16th. I know that's a tall order because from what I understand, visas take months and months and months to get. But if you have that opportunity to travel on a valid visa and you want to come, or your family members want to come, you should definitely try to get that going. Just quickly on the refugee portion of the ban, it's still it's a ban of 120 days for refugees across the world. So there's no country-specific provisions to that. The 2 main differences are that it no longer gives a preference or an exception to people who are trying to come, who are from a religious minority, and that was widely understood to be a preference for Christians. President Trump came out and actually said that that was the purpose of that exception. And before, Syria was specifically singled out as being indefinitely, refugees from Syria were singled out as being indefinitely banned from coming, and that no longer is there. Those 2 things were specifically done, we believe, to make it appear as if it was not targeting Muslims, again, to go to the court order that came down. So those are no longer there, but overall, as I mentioned, or I'm not sure I mentioned this, but the vast majority of people who come as refugees are from Muslim-majority countries, and so we still see that as a very targeted, really targeting the Muslim community. Do you want me to talk about the airport stuff, or sure? So the second part that I'm going to talk about is basically what are your rights at the airport, and this applies not only to the people who are subject to the ban, but just generally across the board. It applies to any immigrant community, so this hopefully will be relevant to a lot more people. And the 2 areas that I'm going to talk about are your rights if you're being interrogated as you come through the border, and your rights with respect to search as you come through the border. And with respect to interrogation, it's important to understand why would you be interrogated as you come across the border. You have valid documents. You either have a passport or a green card or a visa, and that's what's key, is that the questioning that you're going to be getting should really be based on whether you have a right to enter the country, whether you're some kind of a security threat for the country. Anytime the questions go beyond that, your red flag should be raised that those questions are not proper and they're really kind of meant to harass you. So the things that you can be asked about, obviously, are your identity, your immigration status, the purpose of your travel, any items that you brought over. Those are all very legitimate questions. But you cannot be asked about your personal or religious beliefs, your personal or political or religious affiliations, and you should also always remember to carry any document that establishes that you do have a right to come into the country, whether that's your passport, your visa, your immigration status of any kind. And then beyond that, your rights with respect to interrogation get a little bit attenuated based on your immigration status. So the people who have the most rights, unsurprisingly, are citizens. And so when you're questioned, the only questions that are legitimately posed to you are whether you have, like I said, the right, that you have a valid passport, or that you have the right to enter the country as a citizen. Anytime the questions go beyond that, you don't have to answer them, but we all know that if you don't answer them, you're going to have to wait a lot longer at the airport, and you've just had this very long trip and you just want to come into the country. So you should use your discretion, but you just know that you have the right not to answer those questions. And if you feel like you're being harassed, you have the right to file a complaint, and I encourage you to do that so that it sends a message that people are not going to tolerate that. With respect to legal permanent residence, you still have very strong rights because you have a status that's very well recognized as having, the right to come to the country. But there it's a little bit more complicated, and the questions you will get will should be trying to establish whether your legal permanent resident status is intact. So for example, if you stayed outside the country for more than 180 days, if there's something that's come up in your history that shows there's some issues with the criminal justice system, those kinds of things can cause CBP or TSA to subject you to a lot more questions. And you should answer again based on your discretion, but if you feel that it's going outside the scope or that there are things that you're going to say that are going to incriminate you in some way, you absolutely have the right to ask to speak to your lawyer. You're not entitled to a lawyer, but if you have a lawyer, you should have their number handy and ask to make sure to be able to speak to your lawyer before you answer questions that could harm you. And this is another important thing that I'll wrap up with as well, but we're encouraging people who are traveling and who are concerned about any of these issues to get in touch with a lawyer in advance. Basically, get some know your rights about your specific situation, and they can go through this a little bit more specific to your factual situation. And then just have them handy, let them know when your flight is arriving, what time, what airline, all that stuff, so that they could be ready to go to the airport and lobby for you with CBP at the airport. The final category that I'll talk about is visa holders. Unfortunately, they have the very fewest rights, and a CBP, even if you have a valid visa, you've gone through the entire process, a CBP officer does have the authority to deny you the visa on arrival. And if you don't answer questions, that can be a basis to deny your visa. So we are advising people to answer questions if you're a visa holder, even though they go much broader in scope. But if they do start to sound like questions that are about, your religious affiliation or your political affiliations, we do, it's fine to object to them. And it's fine to not answer them, and hopefully they'll get the message. But just know that it is possible that if you don't answer all the questions, they can revoke your visa kind of right then and there. Just quickly on your search rights, because I think this is another thing that comes up, but I'm sure it'll come up. So unfortunately, regardless of your status, you are subject to searches, both your bags, your personal items, all of your devices, your cell phones, your laptops, I don't know what other devices people have these days. I'm a Luddite, so I'm sure there are other devices. But you don't have to give your password. And that's one thing that you should definitely not do. And just broadly speaking, we're actually encouraging people, if they can travel without their devices, to do so, or try to strip your devices of sensitive information. Again, I don't know how you do that, but you should find out and try to do that, because we've heard more and more people, particularly people who are coming over on visas, for example, on visitor visas, they will try to look at your devices. And if it looks like you're trying to, if they construe something on your electronic devices as showing that you have another purpose, for example, if you're actually coming here to work or to overstay your visa, that will be a very strong basis for them to deny you the right to enter, even if it's not true. So best practice is to try not to travel with your devices. If you do, try to strip them, and definitely password protect them.
So very quickly, first of all, thank you, Labani. And if we can give her a round of applause. Perfect. One thing that I want to do is ask everyone to take out their cell phones very quickly. I'm going to give you a number to text, and what I want you to do, and what that's going to help us do, is get you relevant information about Know Your Rights. Again, videos, tips, things like that, if we don't cover everything today, but also about action alerts in the local community, whether it's your local state official, city council member, so that you can be active and you can take this information we're giving you, take the information that the local representative shared with you, and then be active within your community. So the phone number, very quickly, is 714-248-0999. The phone number again is 714-248-0999. 0999, and you can just text the word IIOC. That way we know where we met you all, and we'll give you the relevant information. And what's going to happen is like a text conversation. I'll ask you for your email address, your first name, your last name, and your zip code. And that way when we're giving you the action alerts, it'll be specific to the community that you live in. And then we're putting together some resource pages with Asian American Advancing Justice, and we'll share that with you before the ban comes out. That way you have that information readily accessible. Just a couple of quick takeaways from what Labani said is if you encounter anything that you feel is discriminatory against your religion, your race, your background, make sure to get the officer's name, their card if possible, and then remember who you're engaged with and encountering in this process. Height, weight, description. That way when you come out, you can call one of our organizations, report the incident, and then have us follow up with it. And we've been doing that with our partners, and that's one thing that you all can do to make sure that we have the most information when we're advocating for you. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to Jose so he can talk very quickly about some of the other impacts on the refugee community and know your rights in general.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Jose with World Relief. I oversee the refugee resettlement program with World Relief Garden Grove. We are 1 out of 9 resettlement agencies nationwide. 2 of them are here in Orange County, the other one being East African communities. During the past fiscal year, our fiscal year begins October 1st, we've resettled a total of about 110 refugees. So we're very excited for that and we're very thankful for that, but that's not enough. Our expected capacity was supposed to be 220. But with the ban and the Muslim ban and everything that has just kind of stopped refugee resettlement, we don't know if we're going to see that. I'm going to give you some macro numbers and then the micro. At a national level, we were supposed to resettle 110,000 refugees, and that was because of the previous administration. With this current administration, they cut it down to 50,000 only. So far, we've resettled, and this is we, meaning all the resettlement agencies, not just World Relief Garden Grove. We've resettled a total of 37,000 refugees. That means there's about 12,000 that remain to be resettled, but because of the ban for 120 days, I don't think we will see that. And even if the 120 days pass, I'm not sure if they're going to be allowed to enter. There might be some other things that may happen and stuff. So that is really, really, really sad. And for one reason is the United States accepts less than 1% of the total refugee population. There's over 60 million, right? It's nothing. There's always that question about the vetting process. Refugees go through 5 different types of vettings. FBI, DHS, CBP, all these different agencies, and with Syrians going through a 6th vetting process because of Syria. So it's problematic, and one thing that I do ask the different representatives that are here, the state representatives, is like, what are you doing about it? To make sure that we continue to resettle refugees, and also to protect the rights of all immigrants regardless of their status. Like I said, 110 have been resettled with World Relief. That target, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen, but overall, when the Muslim ban happened, the 1.0 or 2.0, it targeted everyone regardless of their status. Refugees, citizen, green card holders. 3 families within the last 3 months since the ban on the 31st, I think, of January, were not allowed to have any communication with any attorneys, with any families upon entry, and they were all green card holders. Our most recent family, it was a family that was detained incommunicado, which means they weren't allowed to communicate with anyone. The family was separated, so the father was separated from the mother and 3 children, and they were held in detention for 4 days. 4 days. One of the mother was going to be sent to Texas. The father was going to stay here, put in deportation proceedings for no reason, right? Now, when it comes to refugees, when it comes to immigrants, we need to all come together. And the reason I say this is because for this specific family, it took a ton of labor. A lot of different agencies came together. CAIR, TIA Foundation, Public Counsel, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, which is a law firm, World Relief, in order for them to be liberated and just be allowed to enter the United States as they were supposed to. So it is very unfortunate that we are a part of this season where people's rights are targeted, but it's also very important that we unite. One thing that I was thinking is the word comunidad and community both have unity at the end, whether it be in Spanish or in English. And it's so important that we stay together because it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter if you're undocumented, we're all being targeted. One of the things that we are doing throughout the Southern California region is just informing different communities of their rights as immigrants. Heather being our immigration department director is here with me too, so if you have any questions, ask her. But one of the main things that we are talking about is all agencies across have been saying, don't say anything. If you can just remain silent, that is your right. You don't have to provide any information at all, right? The second thing is do not sign any documentation. And I know it's easier for me to say it than when you're actually in the situation where you're being threatened and you're not going to see your children, but those are all scare tactics that we've seen played out. So don't fall into them. The third one is do not carry any documentation that identifies alienage. Alienage is where are you from, right? So if you're a resident and you have a passport from a different country, try not to carry that passport. Just carry your copy of your green card. Don't even carry your original in case it gets lost. But carry a copy of your permanent green card. If you have no status, it is technically law to carry documentation, but don't carry any documentation that might jeopardize your status. One last thing is, for all of you who are out there who are green card holders, even citizens and refugees and undocumented, there is a form that you can download through the USCIS website. The USCIS website is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, and it's a free form. The only thing that's not free, but we may be able to provide, is who that representative could be in case you are detained. It's called Form G28, so the letter G, and then the number 28. And what it says is, in case you're ever detained, or it's usually used when you're going through deportation proceedings, or you need help in filing some kind of immigration work, this document allows an attorney to stand before you, before an immigration judge, before anything that has to do with immigration. So what we're saying is now, if you know of an attorney that you are connected with, or you know a representative who's fully accredited, not partially, but fully accredited from Board of Immigration Appeals, Department of Justice, have them sign that form and carry it with you in case you are at any point detained or held. Lastly, like I said, is just because you're an immigrant, it doesn't mean you don't have rights. We all have rights, and it is up to us to just stay strong. I know we're really tired of that. I am exhausted. But I always think about the families that are coming in. If I'm exhausted and I have status, what is it to a non-documented person who has nothing? So stay strong, stay confident, work with one another, be kind to each other, and let's move on.
So one of the reasons that we wanted to have this Know Your Rights presentation in panel format is, again, to show the solidarity to the community. Sometimes the community isn't aware of what's going on behind closed doors when it comes to our collaborations with one another. After the election occurred on November 8th, we got phone calls, emails from the ACLU, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, saying, look, we know the Muslim community is going to be very impacted. The immigrant community is going to be very impacted. And we want to provide you all with support. We know people are going to be coming to CAIR from the community, and they're going to be seeking your services. How can we help? And I want to commend them on that. Labani, I think this might be her third Know Your Rights presentation within the last 2 weeks that she's doing with us. We've actually done 40 since January 27th. in conjunction with the ACLU and Asian American Advancing Justice. So again, if we can give them another round of applause for what they're doing. And then when it comes to World Relief, when it comes to organizations like Accord and the Public Law Center, we've been working since the beginning of the election time to get people citizenship. We want people to have the greatest rights and liberties that they possibly can have. So over the last 2 years, we've seen citizenship drives and workshops to make sure that people are applying for citizenship and that information is being reviewed by attorneys who are qualified so that their rights are protected, and then when they're at the airport, they can go to a CBP official who asks them about their religion and say, you know what, I want to talk to your supervisor. And when they talk to that supervisor, they tell them those questions aren't appropriate. Here's the contact information for my attorney. I want you to give them a call. Because when you are a citizen, you have greater protections. So again, knowing that, and we want to make sure the community knows that going forward, if you know anyone who's had a green card for more than 5 years, please have them contact CAIR. We're working again with all of these organizations in collaboration with one another to make sure that we give you the resources necessary to be successful. Very quickly, I'm going to touch upon the last topic of the Know Your Rights presentation, and that's engagement with the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and ICE. If they're coming and seeking voluntary interviews with you, or if they're coming to your door or business. And what's really important to know, and Jose touched upon this, you have the right to remain silent and you do not have to participate in these voluntary interviews. And if someone were to come to your door and they knock on your door, if you're looking out the peephole or through the window and you see it's a law enforcement agent, the first thing for you to know is you don't have to answer that door. You don't have to open the door. You ask from behind the door, who is it? Have them announce themselves. What is it that you're looking for? Oh, I just want to talk to you. I know you're not a threat. I just want some information. Well, thank you so much. Go ahead and leave your card on the doormat, and I'll have my attorney contact you. Again, you don't have to open the door. If they tell you, I have a warrant, okay, great. Slide the warrant under the door. Open a window and pass me the warrant. And then we need you to scrutinize that warrant. I know, again, during that time, tensions are going to be high. You're going to be afraid. And that's why it's important to come out to these Know Your Rights presentations. Look at that warrant. Make sure the spelling of that name is correct. Make sure that that individual lives at the house. The address is correct. And then make sure that it's signed by a judge. If it's an administrative warrant, they still don't have a right to enter your house. And they can only come into your house if you allow them to. And that's something for our communities, the immigrant community, the Muslim community, to be aware of. We're very hospitable people. We always want to give people tea and invite them in. That's not how you interact with law enforcement. Because they're there to investigate you. They want to put pressure on you, and even if you have nothing to hide, they want to leverage you to get other community members involved. So that's really important for you to know. Now, let's say something happens. Your child opens the door for them. You open the door not knowing who it is. It's important for you to know, step outside the door, close the door. Once you see that it's a law enforcement individual, once they identify themselves as a law enforcement individual, step outside the door, close it. Again, you have a right to privacy. You don't want that individual coming into your house and snooping around, because the more information that they get, the more you talk to them, the more names they're going to pick up. And then they're going to go after like your 5 closest friends. And you don't want to put your community at risk that way. The last thing to know, and I hope this isn't applicable to anyone in this room, but if you do start talking to them, and you notice, okay, now they're asking me about my religion. They're asking me how often I go to the mosque, things like that. Know that at any point in that conversation, you can walk away. Again, it's a voluntary conversation. So if you see that happening, like, okay, officer, can you actually give me your card? And I'll have my attorney contact you. And then I'm hoping, again, with everyone in the audience right now, that won't be the case, because you'll be brave enough and you'll be informed enough to turn them down at one of the 2 steps prior to that. But if that were to happen, and if you get stuck into a conversation because they're very charismatic, they seem very nice, know that you can walk away from that conversation. And then lastly, contact CAIR immediately. These cases are high priority for us. We'll be there. We'll answer the phone. We're working with, again, great partners that will be there to support you. So that's really important for you all to know. And the last thing that I'm going to touch upon when it comes to know your rights, we've been telling you to be active. So when you want to be active, you have to know your rights when you're going to these protests. Know that when you're going to a public forum, your speech cannot be limited by the content of the speech. The government can put time, place, and manner restrictions on your speech, on where you're organizing, but again, that can't be guided by the content of the conversation or the topic or the speaker. Also know that these, depending on the urgency of the topic of the issue, there are different standards, and I don't want to go too much into the details of that because I want to leave some time for Q&A. But if you have any questions, we'll be here afterwards, and go ahead and ask us. The ability to organize, though, is at a public forum. It's not on private property. So if you're on private property, know that that individual who owns the property can tell you that you're not free to protest there, you're not free to picket there. And when it comes to like sidewalks, you don't necessarily need a permit to organize or protest on the sidewalk as long as you're not obstructing any kind of traffic, and that area can be used in the manner that it has always been. Lastly, I don't want to at any time come off as saying be disrespectful to law enforcement or to provoke law enforcement. It's very important for us to know all of these interactions, we should be empowered, we should be confident, but we should also be respectful, because that will only cause more trouble for you if you use abusive language, if you at any point have any kind of contact with them. That'll just make the situation much more difficult for you. So I just want that to inform your interactions with individuals at protests or at different venues. With that, if we have any of the elected officials who are still here, I'd like to invite you up to sit with us, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Feel free to either ask any of the Know Your Rights panelists or the elected officials any questions that you have.
And I have to tell you that I respect the men and women who wear the uniform and hold badges and take an oath to defend us and defend our liberties. But I am really disturbed by the fact that some of these policies that are not well thought of, that are done for the wrong reason, are contributing to ruin the image of law enforcement, and in some cases or in some ways dehumanize them and cause them to dehumanize other people, right? So how illegal are some of these policies? And I will give you one particular example that I find to be most disturbing. And I have to tell everyone here who may not see this as a big deal, because we welcome everybody here, even if you oppose us politically or if you have different theological point of views. This is a country, to me, this is a country that was founded by, maintained, and shaped by people who were willing to give up their lives to preserve and maintain liberty. And now we are told to give up our liberties in order to live. This is a huge change for me, right? So how okay is it, and what are our elected officials and legislators doing regarding this for law enforcement to have checkpoints within our cities and counties and check on people's immigration status? Because that, to me, if that happens to me with my accent, and I intend, if I ever find myself in that situation, to even have a thicker accent, right? I find that to be extremely disturbing for my 3 children who are born and raised here. How legal is that, and what are we doing to say, listen, you're taking it too far, this is way too much? Thank you very much.
So I can speak to the legal aspect of it, but I'm going to pass the mic first to our elected officials who want to address the issue.
I mean, all I can say is I agree. It is not okay. And what we've seen, there seems to be, a certain amount of pent-up aggression or ambition among those entrusted with law enforcement, and where the rules and where respect for law and subjugation to the law gets murky, you get these kinds of overreaches, and it's not okay. I can tell you at the state level, to the extent that the legislature has oversight, California Highway Patrol indirectly over municipalities, we will do everything we can to ensure that the correct standard is adhered to and that rights are respected.
Also, I want to introduce Jackie Rodarte, who is actually a trustee of the North Orange County Community College District, which is especially critical to this conversation around educational access. And we have so many different students who come from so many backgrounds that it's critical that we think about how higher education is impacted by this process. At the local level with the city, Los Amigos and ACLU, CLU, and OCO worked about 5 years ago with the Anaheim Police Department. We were very concerned about the Obama administration's Secure Communities program, which actually really doubled down on previous efforts to identify undocumented immigrants through the criminal justice system and through local law enforcement. To Anaheim PD's credit, they were very open to shifting their policies, and so Anaheim PD no longer honors the detainers by Immigration Customs Enforcement by ICE. They did not collaborate with immigration officials, with the exception of, as defined by the Trust Act, the state level law that was passed through a lot of advocacy with folks who may be charged and then tried under a criminal violation that is a felony, which is something I think all of our communities struggle with, is what do we do with that really violent criminal aspect in our community? It's a struggle for all of us. So at the local level, it is a striking of the balance. What I am concerned about is that in Anaheim, we do have a surveillance program to collect intelligence. Many police departments do, but being a tourist-based city, there is a lot of concern about being a resort and having 2 stadiums. So we've been trying to work for several years on how do we strike that balance between privacy, civil liberties, and safety. And I'll tell you, folks are just being scared out of their liberties. And it's very difficult. So we're going to need a lot of support, at least in Anaheim, and I'll encourage other cities to really push that conversation of striking that balance, that we err more on the side of liberties, as was suggested, because for me, at the end of the day, if we've given up our liberties, then what are our men and women fighting for when we say they're fighting for us abroad, if we lose our liberties at home by our own devices? So.
It's a very unique situation at the community college level. What we are noticing statewide is enrollment declining, and many students have voiced their concerns with the national rhetoric affecting and oftentimes scaring them to continue their studies. So at the North Orange County Community College District, we really do want to emphasize the value of diversity of our community and want to rest assured to the students that they are in a very safe environment. So we know with campus safety, they do collaborate with the local police departments, but we want to make sure that students and their privacy are protected. So that is guaranteed at the college campuses.
I'll just say super quickly that if you feel that some of the new policies that you've been hearing about are illegal and you have no legal training, rest assured you're correct. That many of them are unlawful, and the civil rights community, including CAIR, Advancing Justice, ACLU, we are scouring every executive order that comes down, and we're gearing up to bring legal challenges. The Muslim ban alone inspired over 40 lawsuits, and a lot of those lawsuits are now going to be amended to address the new ban. Again, as I mentioned, it is a Muslim ban, and I think the very strongest argument we have is on the basis of what's called the Establishment Clause, which says basically that you cannot either promote or denigrate one religion, relative to others. And so I think you will, in the coming days, see those lawsuits get active again. But in addition, there's several immigration executive orders, and we're looking at those as well, because various of those provisions we believe are unlawful.
If we keep our birth certificates and passports in the car, if we're in San Diego County, or could there be like a checkpoint where they're going to ask you to prove your status or your immigration status? So how legal is that, and what are my rights if I'm stopped? Because we're a border state, right? So if we could be traveling through Arizona or Texas.
So within a region, so there's a border, right? And then there is a parameter within the region that everyone needs to have some kind of documentation to prove status. So it applies to citizens, undocumented, everyone, right? Obviously, if you're undocumented, you should not go within that region. I think it's 150 miles. So one thing that we advise is if you don't have status, try to stay from that area. We're not advocating for illegality, right? But we also know that our immigration system is pretty screwed up. There is no system. Also, the other thing is if you're a refugee, right? Or if you're with an asylee and stuff, that's why it's so important to know your rights. And your rights are to remain silent. You don't have to give any information to any official. If I go and knock at your door and I ask for your citizenship certificate, are you going to give it to me? No, you don't know who I am, right? So it's so important that you do this both in your home, when you're out in the streets, even when you're driving. Of course, when you're driving, you do need to provide proof of a driver license. So there's certain limitations as to where you cannot or you don't have to provide documentation, and there's areas where you should. And if you don't have that documentation, then we advise that you probably don't do it. Of course, it's really easy for me to say that because I'm not a father who's undocumented who needs to provide for his family of 5, right? So also one important thing is like there is so much power in community. There is so much power that all of you have. This family that we last talked about, we were advised by people in the federal government not to contact Kamala Harris, also not to provide an attorney, that we might make things worse. I won't say who they were, but we didn't remain quiet. Do not be silenced, work together, know who the community who's advocating for your rights, stay strong, because this is not going to be easy. You know, at the federal level, there's an executive order that's drafted that there's probably no analysis that's done before it's implemented. Then you have different agencies trying to implement that same order without any guidance. And even if they do get guidance, there's something called discretion when it comes to immigration law. If I'm the officer and I interpret a certain type of law the way I want to, that's my quote-unquote jurisdiction. Even if you might have the right to an attorney, but if I say no, who are you going to contact, right? So that's why it's so important to remain silent, follow certain things, and work together as a community and know who the people who your neighbors are and if they're being targeted, because we cannot let people alone. We have to work together.
Labani mentioned the 40 lawsuits that were filed. I've never seen a point in time where so many coalitions are coming together and signing Friends of the Court, amicus briefs. Essentially any of our orgs, and there's about 70 orgs that are working together in the SoCal area. It's like, we're going to be opposing this lawsuit. Do you want to file a Friend of the Court claim with us at the Supreme Court level, for example? And you have all these organizations willing to put the resources out there to show our opposition. Another thing that we're doing at the local level that's really important is the Sanctuary City movement. And when I give you that phone number to text and tell you that we're going to send you action alerts, it's not lip service. It's something that we need you all to do. If there's a family, a refugee family that's being resettled and they're detained, or a green card holder that's being detained, or whatever the case might be, we need people to gather and show force. And that's how we combated the Muslim ban, the initial Muslim ban. The courts and the judges, they're influenced by it. They might say they're not, but when they see the people in the airports, they see the people in the streets responding and being alert to these issues, it has a huge impact. So we really do, we're the legal community and the elected officials who have that knowledge and that understanding of what real American principles stand for. We're doing everything that we can. Now it's time for the community to step up and to know about the issues that are coming up. There's SB 31 in California, the Anti-Registry Act, that CAIR is going to be advocating with so many of our partners at the state capitol. There's Muslim Day on the Capitol coming up on April 24th. There's a lot of these local cities, whether it's a Welcoming Anaheim committee that Dr. Moreno instituted, and other issues that you can be informed of, and going to these city councils and making your voice heard will go a long way. To respect everyone's time, I'm going to ask everyone who's lined up for questioning to direct your question to one individual, so that we can kind of go through the questions as soon as possible, because we're already at 4 and we promised people that we would let them go at 3:30. So again, and I'm going to ask the people answering the questions to keep the answers as short as possible. Thank you.
Hello, I promise to be brief. I'm Debbie Langenbacher, and I'm representing our Social Justice Committee at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Fullerton. One of our practices has been to write letters on specific pieces of legislation requesting that our elected officials would consider our views. Back when the Trust Act that you just mentioned, Dr. Mendoza, was being considered, we wrote several letters to support that. And today today we just started collecting letters in support of Senate Bill 54 and Senate Bill 31, looking at the California Values Act and the Religious Freedom Act. And today I have the first installment of those letters to deliver to Senator Newman. So thank you.
Such a strange mic. So I will respond. I am grateful. I'm already supportive, but this will support me in my advocacy. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll send you more.
Next. Jim Gallagher, proud resident of Senate District 29, where we finally have a Democratic representative. Also, I'm a member of the executive board of the San Bernardino County Democratic Party. I'm pleased to be here. I want to say thank you very much to IIOC and CAIR and our electeds and our representatives and our specialists for pulling this together. We really appreciate it. I have a really simple question. I mean, we're talking about what's going on at the airports, and I know one of the other tools of harassment that Homeland Security has often used are those watch lists and those do not fly lists. Have you seen an uptick in that recently, in their use?
So something the Muslim community has been going through since 9/11 is secondary questioning, the inability to print your boarding pass, these random checks, the quad S's that appear on the boarding pass, and that's continued to occur even with quote-unquote more supportive administrations in the federal government. Those issues weren't addressed, and there's a lot of federal litigation and lawsuits being prepared, and again, battles that have already taken place. It's very difficult in this national security context to get any kind of movement on these issues. We do have some temporary fixes for individuals who might be on a list by mistake, meaning you can fill out this form called the TRIP. You can contact CAIR. We'll help you with that to see if your name is on one of these lists by mistake. The other thing that we have is CAIR is a national organization with 34 offices nationwide, and our Michigan office is leading a federal lawsuit against one of these watch lists. So trying to get individuals off of the list, essentially. So if you have anyone who's been impacted, have them contact us. And if we can't help them, we can always direct them to the attorneys who are able to address that. Labani, is there anything you want to add?
Because there's been so much other chaos, I have not heard that there's been more people put on those watch lists, but those watch lists are already so huge. They're just vastly disproportionate to any real kind of concern over national security. So I think the battle really now is to continue to try to chip away at those. But I think what we're seeing now is more this extreme vetting beyond the 6 countries. So that's just my perspective.
With that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to close the program. I want to thank IIOC again for hosting us, our incredible panelists, local officials who came out and took the time to talk. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.